Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Bai Xiaochun's face fell. Even as he recalled the words spoken to him from within the jade slip, the little turtle shrieked and flew back into his bag of holding. If you die, kid, I'll burn some incense for you. It's too bad that Lord Turtle just escaped the clutches of evil, only to get stuck in this place. Bai Xiaochun was completely infuriated. Gritting his teeth, he howled, "Shut your mouth." However, now was not the time to worry about the little turtle. Listen up, you big toad. I know you can hear me. Let me go, and I won't hurt you. I agree that the cultivator from ancient times pushed things too far with you. That doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm innocent, alright? Let me go. We don't have any grudges with each other. Let's talk things over. There's no need to hurt each other, okay? When I really attack, I frighten even myself. Even as his words were still echoing about, rumbling sounds filled the inside of the huge toad, and intense pressure exploded out. Bai Xiaochun trembled, coughing up a mouthful of blood as his bones creaked ominously. Within the intense pressure, he could sense a raging malice, as though the hatred the toad felt for the ancient cultivator was now being transferred to Bai Xiaochun. Apparently, no matter what Bai Xiaochun said, it wouldn't listen at all. "You," he said, trembling, a sensation of deadly crisis rising up within him. However, before he could say anything else, the pressure mounted, and the immortals' cave began to collapse even more quickly. The little turtle was screaming, and Bai Xiaochun was on the verge of going mad. "You big bully," he cried, wounds opening up all over him, soaking his robes with blood. There was no time for rumination. The toad was clearly attempting to kill him. Gritting his teeth, he followed the instructions within the jade slip, reaching out with his right hand to grab the black parasol. Then, he stabbed it viciously down into the ground. The razor-sharp tip of the parasol slid smoothly into the ground, and then down into the flesh and blood of the toad. As blood spurted out, Bai Xiaochun's eyes gleamed, and he tightened his grip on the parasol. With the other hand, he performed an incantation gesture and simultaneously muttered some incomprehensible words of enchantment. Then, just in the moment that the immortal's cave was about to completely fall to pieces, he roared, "Eternal." In response, black light exploded out from the eternal parasol. In the blink of an eye, it filled the immortal's cave, and then began to spread out to cover other parts of the toad's body. As the black light spread, it stimulated various restrictive spells which had been placed throughout the toad. The spells began to rumble, and yet, apparently because of the vast amount of time which had passed, most of them were weakened and in complete disrepair. In the end, only a few thousand activated fully. However, each one of that small group alone managed to create a massive gravitational force, something like a black hole. The 1,000 or so restrictive spells were like 1,000 black holes inside the huge toad, with the eternal parasol forming the nucleus of them all. As the gravitational force spread out, the toad began to tremble, and emit increasingly intense roars. Bai Xiaochun was shaking as, all of a sudden, the black holes began to gobble up the life force of the toad and send it toward the eternal parasol. An indescribably boundless power of qi and blood then began to flow through the parasol into Bai Xiaochun's right hand. Rumble. Bai Xiaochun's mind was spinning. His gaze was vacant, and his hair whipped around him. It felt like his soul was about to fly out of his body. His mind slowly became a blank as the seemingly endless power of qi and blood flowed into him. Qi and blood could also be considered life force, and as it flowed madly into him, Bai Xiaochun's undying live forever technique began to spin of its own accord. It was almost like immortal nectar being poured down onto cracked, parched ground. The technique rapidly advanced until Bai Xiaochun was shaking where he stood. His fleshly body began to grow stronger at an incredible, explosive rate. A third heavenly demon appeared. A fourth heavenly demon appeared. Almost immediately, 4 heavenly demons appeared behind him, their heads thrown back as they howled, sending boundless might out in all directions. However, the struggling of the toad only intensified. Unceasing rumbling sounds echoed out as the more than 1,000 restrictive spells began to collapse, causing miserable shrieking sounds to echo out inside of the toad's body. However, the gravitational force persisted. With every breath of time that passed, boundless life force flowed through the restrictive spells and into the eternal parasol, to be absorbed by Bai Xiaochun. As it did, more heavenly demons formed. A fifth, a sixth. The little turtle cautiously peeped out of the bag of holding, and then his jaw dropped. He even started to feel a little jealous. Damn it, what kind of luck is this? Finally, he simply rolled his eyes in a rare moment of speechlessness. By this point, he could tell that, in truth, not even 10,000 Bai Xiaochuns put together would be a match for the huge toad. However, the toad was filled with countless restrictive spells, all of which were focused onto the parasol. More accurately, Bai Xiaochun wasn't the one absorbing the toad's life force, it was the parasol. All Bai Xiaochun had to do was recite the correct enchantment. Who exactly put this immortal's cave here? The turtle thought. This kind of thing is really rare. Meanwhile, in the wild mountains outside, the huge toad was roaring so loudly that brightly colored light flashed in heaven and earth. A huge wind screamed in all directions, and mountains in the area were collapsing into pieces as the toad flailed back and forth, withering visibly the entire time. Birds and beasts alike were shaking in fear, and many were killed in the quaking. The entire 5,000-kilometer area was being turned into nothing more than ruins as the toad descended into madness. Beyond that region, the 5 patriarchs of the Spirit Stream sect were closing in at top speed, along with the legacy echelon cultivators. The Heavenhorn Ink Dragon was with them, leading the way. The founding patriarch's expression was grave. They had been at a critical juncture in extracting the beast skeleton when the news came in from the dragon. Although they couldn't stop the process in the middle, they had been able to speed up their work. After successfully collecting the beast skeleton, they summoned the legacy echelon, and then used the Heavenhorn Ink Dragon scales they all possessed to head over to rescue Bai Xiaochun. That toad probably has battle prowess in the late nascent soul stage, the founding patriarch said through gritted teeth. If it dares to hurt our junior patriarch, I'm going to sever its tendons and skin it alive. Patriarch Ironwood, Li Zimo, and the other 2 patriarchs were all extremely anxious. If something bad happened to Bai Xiaochun, it would be a disaster for the river-defying sect. Although they would still be just as powerful as before, there would surely be schisms and divisions in the near future. Li Qinghao's eyes were completely bloodshot, and he radiated icy killing intent as he shot through the air. The Heavenhorn Ink Dragon was feeling very nervous, and didn't dare to say much. All it could do was lead the way as quickly as possible. Soon, they were within the 5,000-kilometer area that was affected by the toad's rampage. Before the Heavenhorn Ink Dragon could even comment, intense booms could be heard, and mountains could be seen collapsing. The ground was shaking violently, and countless birds and beasts were dying. The patriarchs and legacy echelon cultivators all gasped. What's going on? Shocked, and even more nervous than before, the group headed forward at top speed. It was around that time that Bai Xiaochun's 7th heavenly demon roared into existence. After that was the 8th, and then the 9th. 9 heavenly demons all appeared behind him, causing his fleshly body to rocket to unprecedented heights. The cultivation of the undying live forever technique required life force. With enough of it, the potential for progress was virtually limitless. Back in the Bloodstream sect, he had been able to use the blood chi of the blood ancestor to quicken his progress. Now, he was using the chi and blood from this huge toad to make terrifyingly quick progress toward the 2nd level of the undying live forever technique. The 10th heavenly demon was rapidly forming, and once it was complete, Bai Xiaochun would reach the Asura body level of the undying live forever technique. After the Asura body was the highest level, the undying heavenly king body. When that time came, he would be able to break through the 2nd shackle of life, and potentially form a fleshly body nascent core, which was also more commonly known as an undying heavenly king core. Rumble. Bai Xiaochun was trembling visibly. As the life force poured into him and the 10th heavenly demon took shape, a miraculous transformation was occurring in his spiritual seas. His 7th spiritual sea suddenly crystallized, and then his 8th. In fact, the process was going along so rapidly that his 9th spiritual sea was already about half crystallized, and was continued to grow more solid by the 2nd. He was growing stronger in all aspects. To Bai Xiaochun, this was an incredible good fortune, and all of it was because of the eternal parasol. The parasol seemed to radiate an evil aura as it rapidly sucked in the life force of the toad through the restrictive spells. By this point, the toad was like a candle flickering on the verge of being extinguished. The toad wanted to fight back, but all it could do was roar in frustration. As the gravitational force continued to suck away at its life force, it let out a miserable shriek and withered down even more. As that happened, Bai Xiaochun's 9th spiritual sea reached a state of 90% crystallization. With 10% more, he would reach the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment, a level of power vastly greater than before. It was in that moment that his 10th heavenly demon fully formed. In the blink of an eye, the 10 heavenly demons superimposed, instantly becoming a blurry field of mist. The mist seethed and roiled, sending out terrifying fluctuations. Apparently, a completely awe-inspiring Dharma incarnation was forming. Then, a magical halo of fire appeared within the mist, a fire that seemed to contain infinite screaming souls. Beneath the fiery halo, 2 red dots appeared that looked like eyes. Only half a moment later, though, 2 more red eyes appeared next to the first 2. Then a third pair appeared. From the look of it, the figure within the mist had 3 heads. Within the following short few breaths of time, 2 enormous, pitch-black arms stretched out from inside the mist. However, things weren't over yet. A second pair of arms appeared, and then a third. After that was a black suit of armor. The image which was forming was something that seemed powerful enough to prop up heaven and earth, a figure of incomprehensible power. It had 3 heads and 6 arms, and radiated terrifying might. This was none other than the manifestation of the undying Asura body. Bai Xiaochun shook as his fleshly body power skyrocketed. He was now vastly stronger than he had been before, and when he opened his eyes, they shone so brightly that they could surpass the light of the sun and the moon. It was in the moment that his eyes opened that his soul seemed to return. Pulling the eternal parasol out of the toad's flesh, and thus ending the absorption of life force, he blurred into motion. Howling, he reached out, tore a huge opening in the wall, and shot out into the open. As he flew up into the air, he probed his cultivation base and saw that it was only a hair away from the great circle of foundation establishment. Then he confirmed that he had upgraded from the heavenly demon body to the Asura body, whereupon elation filled his heart. The huge toad was now completely emaciated and panting for breath. Before, it could have easily defeated Bai Xiaochun, but now that much of its life force had been sucked away, it could do little more than gasp and look pleadingly at Bai Xiaochun, as if begging for mercy. Fear had truly gripped its heart. Earlier, it had completely ignored Bai Xiaochun's suggestion, and had hoped to take him by surprise and kill him, and thus completely change its own fate. But now, the only emotions in its eyes as it looked at Bai Xiaochun were supplication and terror. That was especially true when it looked at the black parasol he held, the mere sight of which left the toad trembling. Bai Xiaochun felt a bit bad for the toad. Sighing, he said, "I mentioned in the beginning that we could have worked things out, but you decided to bully me. Like I said, when I attack, I frighten even myself. Still don't believe me?" He shook his head and sighed even more deeply at how much of a straightforward and upright person he was. Whenever he attacked people, he always gave them a warning, but sadly, no one ever believed him. Even as he prepared to sigh some more, several beams of light appeared off in the distance. Heart-thumping, and having no time to ponder his next action, he quickly performed an incantation gesture with his right hand and then pointed his finger at the toad. Trying to look as threatening as possible, he stuck his chin up and coolly said, "How dare you, Mr. Invincible, unsurpassable toad monster? You think you can fight with me, Bai Xiaochun? HMMMPHHH. Well, do you surrender or not?" In almost the same moment, the patriarchs and legacy echelon cultivators burst onto the scene, and saw the shocking sight of the withered toad. The toad didn't look huge and impressive like before. It looked almost like a mere pile of skin, lying there gasping for breath, its eyes shining with terror as it looked at the person standing in front of it. That look in its eyes seemed to be one of complete and utter dread. As for the person standing in front of the toad, it was none other than Bai Xiaochun. When they heard Bai Xiaochun's words, the newcomers exchanged dismayed, even confused, glances. They had rushed over here from distant locations with the intention of rescuing Bai Xiaochun. How could they ever have imagined that a scene like this would meet them upon their arrival? Li Qinghao was dumbstruck, and the legacy echelon cultivators were left gasping. Even the patriarch's jaws had dropped. A look of incredulous disbelief could be seen on the face of the heaven-horn ink dragon. The sight of the emaciated toad seemed completely unbelievable, to the point where the dragon was starting to question whether it had made a mistake in judgment earlier. After a moment of silence, the founding patriarch looked over at Heavenhorn. "Heavenhorn, are you sure this is the toad you mentioned earlier?" "Aye," mumbled the Heavenhorn ink dragon. After a moment of contemplation, it was sure that this was the same huge toad. However, the scene playing out before them seemed completely unbelievable. The dragon couldn't help but look over at Bai Xiaochun, reverence rising up in its heart. Pretending that he'd just noticed the new arrivals, Bai Xiaochun turned his head to look at them. His veins of steel were pulsing, his murderous aura roiling out in all directions. Clasping hands and bowing, he coolly said, "Greetings, patriarchs. I very much appreciate your expression of goodwill. However, I, Bai Xiaochun, have already vanquished this unbeatable toad monster." Strange looks appeared on everyone's faces. Clearly, they knew he was showing off, and yet there was nothing they could say by way of retort. They began to smile wryly as they realized that, apparently, Bai Xiaochun was never going to truly grow up. "How did you do this?" the founding patriarch asked. He could see that the toad's cultivation base really was at the late nascent soul stage, perhaps even in the Great Circle. It was actually very close to being in the Diva realm. I was born with the power of the gods, Bai Xiaochun replied, clasping his hands behind his back and sticking his chin up. As someone who has reached Heavenstring Foundation establishment, I can shake the heavens. I called countless bolts of heaven Dao lightning down upon this creature, seriously injuring it. The only reason I showed it mercy in the end was because I pitied it. His casual tone mixed with the words he spoke caused everyone present to wish they could give him a good smack across the face. Even Li Qinghao felt the same way. Seeing Bai Xiaochun show off like this left him chuckling wryly inside. Patriarchs and other fellow Taoists, thank you for coming to save me. I was injured in the process, and yet single-handedly defeated this unsurpassable monster. Even still, your expression of friendship will forever be inscribed upon my heart. To return the favor, allow me to present this monster as a gift to the sect. With that he flicked his sleeve. After all, with the snap of a finger, I, Bai Xiaochun, can reduce any kind of beast to ashes. The founding patriarch's cheek twitched. He really couldn't take any more of this. With a final glare at Bai Xiaochun, he looked over at the toad. Inside, he was delighted. Waving his hand, he collected the toad into his bag of holding. Although the toad's vital energy had been seriously damaged, with time and rest, it would recover, and could prove to be another powerful spirit beast guardian for the Spirit Stream sect. There was even a bit of Beast King aura left on the toad. The patriarchs were delighted. They could sense its life force had recently been drained away, but they didn't say anything. Although they had their suspicions, they kept them to themselves. As for the legacy echelon cultivators, they all approved. When a disciple acquired good fortune, it belonged to that disciple. If others in the sect tried to steal it away, it would lead to discord within the sect. Besides, Bai Xiaochun was the junior patriarch. Not even nascent soul masters would go overboard in dealing with a person like that. Soon, the group was on their way back, and Bai Xiaochun was in their midst looking exactly like a lonely hero. Of course, inside, he was bursting with joy. So, he thought, this place really did turn out to have some good fortune. Excellent, very excellent. I guess I won't get rid of the little turtle after all. Perhaps he will lead to more good fortune in the future. Although he felt completely pleased, he suddenly recalled what the Heavenhorn Ink Dragon had done, and looked over at it with a glare. Heavenhorn's heart trembled. It had been able to tell earlier that 90% of the toad's life force had been drained away, and that fact left the dragon trembling in fear. It wasn't sure what secret method Bai Xiaochun had used to accomplish such a task. Regardless, it was a terrifying thing. Now, an ingratiating expression could be seen on its face when it looked at Bai Xiaochun. Actually, its behavior earlier was quite similar to how Bai Xiaochun himself would have acted. Bai Xiaochun nodded magnanimously at the dragon. It was in that fashion that the group returned to the entrance, flew through the vortex, and found themselves back in the Spirit Stream sect. After everyone emerged, the vortex vanished, and the Heavenhorn Ink Dragon sank back down into the chasm to stand guard. Now that the patriarchs and the legacy echelon cultivators were back, the final work on the Heavenspan battleships began. Everyone in the sect helped out as the Diva Beast spine was used to craft the keels of the ships. There were a total of 3, each one a different size. The largest was 300,000 meters long, and completely awe-inspiring in appearance. It hadn't started moving yet, but it looked like a gigantic mountain that caused all of the Spirit Stream sect disciples who saw it to tremble in awe and reverence. And that was just based on its appearance. The largest of the Heavenspan battleships emanated a shocking aura that surpassed that of a nascent soul patriarch. It was at a completely different level altogether, the aura of a diva. After the nascent soul stage was the diva realm. This battleship had been made with the spine of a diva beast, and even though it couldn't necessarily unleash the full might of the diva realm, it was still incredibly powerful. It would make their trip up the Heavenspan River much safer. That, coupled with the dharmic decree from the river source Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, would ensure that they faced almost no hazards along the way. Of course, the largest of the battleships was big enough to contain all of the Spirit Stream sect cultivators who were going to war. The second of the battleships was a bit smaller, being only 210,000 meters in length, and had been prepared specifically for the Profound Stream sect. The last of the battleships was the smallest, being only 90,000 meters long. However, it had been constructed in the same fashion as the largest, and radiated the aura of the Diva realm. Before leaving their temporary headquarters, the patriarchs of the 4 sects had already agreed that the Bloodstream division didn't need a Heavenspan battleship. Apparently, they had their own way of traveling up the Heavenspan River. When the third battleship was completed, all the disciples in the Spirit Stream division felt shaken. Everyone knew that the most critical part of the war was coming. They would soon travel up the river to destroy the Sky River Court and take its place. Bai Xiaochun had no desire to see anyone die. However, he was no saint either, and didn't allow such feelings to extend to people he didn't even know. What he cared about were his family and friends. Half a month later, the founding patriarch's voice echoed out through the sect, accompanied by the tolling of bells. All disciples of the river-defying sect's Spirit Stream division who have been assigned to fight will now board the battleship. Our next destination is the Bloodstream division, further up the Heavenspan River. The Spirit Stream division instantly stirred into action. There was no chaos. Thanks to the arrangements made by sect leader Zheng Yuandong, as well as the various peak lords, all disciples and battle beasts boarded the battleship in an orderly fashion. The precious treasures and reserve powers of the sect were also loaded onto the battleship. Bai Xiaochun even saw a familiar coffin, which was now covered. Under the patriarch's care, it was placed in a secret location on the battleship. Bai Xiaochun knew at a glance that the coffin contained the true spirit. "They're even bringing the true spirit," he murmured to himself. The Spirit Stream division was clearly going all out in this war effort. It took 3 full days to move the Spirit Stream division's 9th mountain peak onto the battleship. By this point, the Spirit Stream sect seemed empty. There were only some outer sect disciples left behind to operate the grand spell formation and protect the headquarters. The 2 unused battleships vanished by means of the teleportation power of the 9th mountain peak. Bai Xiaochun stood on the battleship looking back at the old headquarters, a profound look in his eyes. Hu Xiaomei stood next to him. Looking a bit scared, she edged closer. Heaven shaking, earth-shattering rumbling sounds then echoed out as the Spirit Stream division's Heavenspan battleship vanished. When it reappeared, it was beyond the Luokan Mountains, which was the limit of its teleportation power. As soon as it appeared in Bloodstream division territory, the people who had been sent out to receive the Spirit Stream division bowed respectfully, and at the same time, gasped in shock at the sight of the huge ship. It wasn't just them. Any living beings in the area who could see the Heavenspan battleship with its diva pressure were shocked. Everything went completely silent. The Bloodstream division disciple led the way. Rumbling sounds echoed out that could break all barriers as the Heavenspan battleship headed in the direction of the Bloodstream division headquarters. As Bai Xiaochun stood there at the front of the battleship looking out at the lands in front of him, he felt a great sense of familiarity. The battleship was incredibly fast, even faster than nascent Soul Patriarchs. It only took about 6 hours before the Heavenspan River became visible off in the distance. There, the hand of the Blood Ancestor could be seen stretching out of the river, forming the mountain peaks of the former Bloodstream sect. For most cultivators of the Spirit Stream division, this was their first time seeing the headquarters of the Bloodstream division. Although they had heard stories, to see it personally was completely different, and all of them were left astonished. "That's a hand. Heavens! I can't believe there's actually a huge hand stretching out of the Heavenspan River. If the 5 fingers of that hand can each make a whole mountain peak, then how big is the rest of the giant? So this is the Bloodstream division, huh?" Even as everyone marveled, the Heavenspan battleship slowly approached the headquarters. The Profound Stream division and the Pill Stream division had not been tasked with creating their own Heavenspan battleships, so they had long since come to the Bloodstream division headquarters and set up camp outside. Earlier, the camps and the sect headquarters had been quite bustling, but the arrival of the Heavenspan battleship changed that. Now everyone was looking over and gasping in shock. Even the cultivators of the Bloodstream division had that reaction. The Spirit Stream division was shaken by the sight of the huge hand, and the Bloodstream division was shaken by the Heavenspan battleship. Even the patriarchs of the other 3 divisions were taken aback, and their eyes began to shine brightly. A diva beast's spine as the keel, crafted into a Heavenspan battleship, the Spirit Stream division truly is adept at keeping secrets. Of our 4 divisions, they are the best at concealing their resources. Even as everyone gave voice to their astonishment, the 300,000-meter-long Heavenspan battleship descended into the Heavenspan River itself. Massive golden waves rolled about, leading to quite a bit of nervousness on the part of the onlookers. Eventually, though, the huge battleship came to rest calmly on the surface of the Heavenspan River. The water didn't corrode the ship or hurt it in any way. The Diva Realm aura rolled out, and even the vicious spirits which inhabited the waters avoided it. At first, silence reigned, but then, wild cheering broke out. Although most gazes shone brightly, Patriarch Crimson Soul from the Profound Stream division didn't seem very happy, and gave a cold harumph. Patriarch Frigid Sect, we gave you enough materials to make at least 5 heavenspan battleships. Don't be so impatient, Crimson Soul. I've already made all the preparations for the Profound Stream Division and the Pill Stream Division. The founding patriarch of the Spirit Stream Sect laughed heartily as he waved his hand. Immediately, a second battleship appeared and began to descend toward the Heavenspan River, followed by a third. Finally, a smile broke out on Patriarch Crimson Soul's face, and his eyes burned with anticipation as he looked at the 210,000-meter-long Heavenspan battleship. As for all of the materials he had provided, that didn't matter anymore. A battleship with the might of a Diva Realm beast was far more than worth it. As for the patriarchs of the Pill Stream Division, they felt slightly left out. However, their 90,000-meter battleship was still formidable, and they knew they were the weakest of the 4 divisions. As Bai Xiaochun looked around at everything that was happening, the gathering of the 4 divisions of the sect, and the familiar Bloodstream Division headquarters, he felt more content than ever. With my help, 4 great sects united and became the river-defying sect. Maybe the name isn't that amazing, but it was my idea. As he looked around proudly, he happened to catch sight of Song Junwan on Middle Peak. She was smiling as she looked over at Bai Xiaochun, and he was just about to wave to her when he suddenly found that he couldn't move his arm. Looking over, he realized that Hu Xiaomei was casually holding it in her own arm. First, she glared at Song Junwan, and then she pointed up into the sky and excitedly said, "Look, big bro Xiaochun, an iris petal ibis." Without even thinking about it, Bai Xiaochun looked up and saw a bird flying through the air. Suddenly he shivered. Meanwhile, Chen Manyao was standing behind one of the patriarchs in the Pill Stream Division's camp, looking at the battleships. When she saw Bai Xiaochun, an imperceptible flicker passed through her eyes, but then it vanished. A moment later, her skin began to prickle as she realized that someone was looking at her, someone who was on the Spirit Stream Division's battleship. It wasn't Bai Xiaochun, but rather, another disciple in the Spirit Stream Division, a graceful, beautiful young woman. She wore a long green garment that did little to conceal her curvaceous form. An unreadable expression could be seen on her face, as well as an enigmatic smile. Chen Manyao suddenly felt icy cold, inside and out. There was an instinctual terror that rose up inside of her. Her heart began to beat, and she quickly averted her gaze. Who is she? How come her gaze is so terrifying? The young woman who had been looking at Chen Manyao was none other than Gongsun Wan'er. Smiling slightly, she looked around, apparently feeling somewhat bored. She didn't seem to be interested either in the previous battles or the fighting to come. Only when she turned to look at Bai Xiaochun standing somewhat stiffly next to Hu Xiaomei did her eyes brighten in a way that no observer could notice. "What's your connection to that old bastard, huh, sweetie?" She chuckled, and for a brief moment, her pupils turned white. However, no one noticed, and the effect quickly passed. Under the leadership of the various patriarchs, the cultivators of the Profound Stream Division and the Pill Stream Division flew up toward their respective heavenspan battleships to begin familiarizing themselves with them. Meanwhile, in the Bloodstream Division, Archpatriarch Master Godwind hovered in midair looking at the 3 battleships. After a moment, he turned to the Spirit Stream Division's Patriarch Frigid Sect. After realizing that Master Godwind was looking at him, Frigid Sect laughed and said, "Master Godwind, river transportation has been arranged for the other 3 divisions. I'm curious to see how your Bloodstream Division plans to head upriver." From the way he laughed and spoke, he clearly felt very proud of himself. After all, creating 3 heavenspan battleships was definitely a major accomplishment. Archpatriarch Master Godwind snorted and said, "No need to get nervous. You'll see soon enough." In his heart were mixed emotions including jealousy, as well as anticipation. With that, he looked in Bai Xiaochun's direction. "Night Crypt, my boy, are you ready?" When the cultivators from the other 3 divisions heard his words, they looked in surprise toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was currently feeling a headache coming on as he looked up in the sky in the direction that Hu Xiaomei had pointed. Off in the distance, Song Junwan was smiling, but there was a coldness in her eyes which made a million needles look soft. Bai Xiaochun had no idea how to resolve the situation. Therefore, when he heard the Archpatriarch's words, he was inwardly delighted. Putting on a very somber expression, he said, "Patriarch, disciple is ready." With that, he struggled free from Hu Xiaomei's devilish clutches and flew up into the air. Smiling proudly, Hu Xiaomei looked away from Bai Xiaochun toward Song Junwan standing there on Middle Peak. Song Junwan snorted coldly. After Bai Xiaochun had escaped from the Luokan Mountains, she and Hu Xiaomei had clashed and bickered constantly. Neither of them liked the other very much at all. Looking very excited, the Archpatriarch spoke out in a voice that boomed like thunder, "Very well. Foundation Establishment and Gold Core Cultivators of the Bloodstream Division, present yourselves. The time has come to activate our greatest reserve power. To the shock of the other three divisions, numerous beams of light flew out from the Bloodstream Division headquarters. All of the Foundation Establishment Dharma Protectors, Grand Elders, Blood Masters, Prime Elders, and Blood Rippers were there. Not a single one was missing. All 7 Patriarchs were present. Even Patriarch Limitless looked very excited. Master Godwin's right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, and blood chi erupted from the assembled crowd. Instantly, the sky began to vibrate, and blood clouds began to form. The clouds rapidly began to converge upon themselves, shrinking down into a bolt of blood-colored lightning which shot down toward the enormous hand stretching up out of the river. In response, the magical symbols on the spell formations in that area flickered and shone as they seemingly melted, revealing a large gap. That gap had apparently already existed on the skin of the Blood Ancestor's hand, an ancient wound that had existed for countless years. From a distance, the wound almost looked like a huge canyon. The cultivators from the other 3 divisions were amazed, especially the Patriarchs. Their eyes went wide as they realized what the Bloodstream Division intended to do. That's impossible. Frigid Sect said, a look of complete incredulity on his face. Looking extremely proud of himself, Master Godwin said, Blood Ancestor. Fleshly body. 108 major acupoints. He had been looking forward to this day for a very, very long time, and been making preparations for countless years. This was the culmination of generations of hard work and research on the part of numerous Bloodstream Sect cultivators. As his words echoed out, the Foundation Establishment cultivators of the Bloodstream Division began to fly forth with solemn looks on their faces. Song Junwan, Song Ke, Jia Lai, and Master God Diviner were among them, as were the Blood Masters and Grand Elders. All of them headed directly toward the gap which had been opened up in the hand. After they vanished inside, secret means were employed to teleport them to the various 108 major acupoints located elsewhere in the Blood Ancestor's body. Some were transported to various locations on their own, others went in teams. After taking their places, streams of life force power began to rise up from the Heavenspan River, causing rumbling sounds to echo about in the sky. Looking even more excited, Master Godwin said, Blood Ancestor. Fleshly body. 72 blood apertures. In response, the Prime Elders' expressions flickered, and they let out excited cries as they shot toward the opening in the arm. The 72 apertures had to be manned by 72 gold core cultivators. In the case of some of the cultivators who were weaker than the others, a team of 2 was necessary. Before Bai Xiaochun's arrival, they had run various drills to prepare, but this was the moment of truth. As the Prime Elders disappeared into the enormous arm, it was possible to see dots of light shining up from the Blood Ancestor's enormous body beneath the surface of the Heavenspan River. Those glowing dots of lights, some of which were visible on the hand, extended out of the river, numbering exactly 72. The cultivators from the other 3 divisions were all gasping. Even Gongsun Wanner's eyes were glittering with surprise. Voice rising to a roar, the Arch-Patriarch said, Blood Ancestor. Fleshly body. 37 meridians. Instantly, the eyes of the Blood Rippers began to glow, and their blood chi erupted out as they shot toward the opening. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. By this point, every bit of the Blood Ancestor's body was glowing with blood-colored light. The light was so intense that it was rising up beyond the surface of the Golden River water. At the same time, an indescribable pressure was spreading out, causing the vicious spirits within the river to scream and flee. None of them dared to get even close, and they were clearly more terrified than they had been upon sensing the Diva Realm aura from earlier. 3 spiritual souls, 7 physical souls. 1 nascent soul Taoist master for each physical soul. If the spiritual souls are lacking, the Blood Ancestor's body will not move. Night Crypt, my boy, you will fill the position of the 3 spiritual souls. You are well prepared, all of you. Whether or not the Blood Ancestor's body can move will be up to you. Laughing loudly, the Arch-Patriarch flew toward the opening, as did the other 6 Patriarchs, giving Bai Xiaochun a glance just before disappearing. Moments later, rumbling like thunder echoed out, and the river water began to churn as the 7 powerful Patriarchs took their positions in the head of the Blood Ancestor, where they became the physical soul. Shockingly, well over 200 Foundation Establishment cultivators, over 100 Gold Core experts, and dozens of Blood Rippers, plus 7 nascent Soul Patriarchs, were unleashing shocking power inside the body of the Blood Ancestor, to give him the strength to rise to his feet once again. Although it was a simplistic movement, it would still be shocking enough to cause the wind to scream and the ground to quake. However, as the Archpatriarch had said, the truly critical factor, Bai Xiaochun, had not yet gone into action. The bloodstream division had actually performed this exercise before, but they had been unable to get the blood ancestor to move even an inch. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. Upon opening them, he sent blood qi exploding out of him, becoming a pillar of crimson light that shot up into the sky. At the same time, he blurred into motion, heading directly toward the opening in the blood ancestor's hand. As soon as he entered, it felt as if the blood ancestor's body were calling to him. That call helped him to speed along even faster through the body. He didn't need any special techniques or magics. He proceeded forward without the slightest obstacle. The foundation establishment cultivators are the acupoints. The gold core experts are the apertures. The blood rippers are the meridians. The patriarchs are the physical soul. And I'm the spiritual soul. Eyes shining with a strange light, he shot toward his destination, which was located in the blood ancestor's chest. He was heading toward the heart. That was also the last place where he had seen Du Lingfei. Nothing blocked his path, and before long he was traveling the same path he had gone along once before. Eventually, he arrived in the heart cavity, the same place he had entered not so long ago in the past. When he saw the withered heart, and the countless blood vessels filling the area, he took a deep breath. Then he shot toward the heart itself. In the blink of an eye, he fused into the heart, completely replacing it. The beating of his heart echoed out into the blood ancestor, becoming the blood ancestor's heart. The blood vessels around him began to tremble as his consciousness spread out through them. He could soon sense the foundation establishment cultivators in the 108 major acupoints, the prime elders in the 72 apertures, the blood rippers in the 36 meridians, and even the 7 patriarchs who had become the physical soul. I am the blood ancestor. Bai Xiaochun roared. Although his voice couldn't be heard on the outside, all bloodstream division cultivators inside could hear it clearly. It was like a signal calling out to them, prompting all of them to roar at the tops of their lungs, and unleash all of the blood qi they possessed. The blood qi began to surge through the blood ancestor, starting from the acupoints, then moving through the blood apertures, then the qi passageways, and into the 7 physical souls. Then it converged upon Bai Xiaochun's consciousness. No other person could do this but him, the Blood Lord. When he received the legacy of the blood ancestor, he became connected to the bloodstream sect, and thus, all of the cultivators in it. He was related to the blood ancestor. The only thing they had lacked was the consciousness, something that could link everyone together. The only person who could do that was obviously the Blood Lord. Rumbling sounds echoed out from inside the body of the blood ancestor as his enormous frame twitched, a motion that sent countless waves surging across the Heavenspan River, and caused the headquarters of the Bloodstream Division to quake violently. The countless Bloodstream Division disciples who had long since packed their belongings and evacuated the headquarters now stood on the banks of the river, watching excitedly as the scene played out. Stand up, stand up. It was hard to say who said it first, but soon, all of the cultivators of the Bloodstream Division were shouting it. The other 3 sects looked on with complete astonishment. However, controlling the blood ancestor was no simple task. Even with all the preparations they had made, for the following 7 days, the only thing that happened was that the blood ancestor continued to twitch here and there. The Bloodstream Division cultivators' nervousness mounted, and eventually, they stopped shouting. However, in their hearts, they were cheering as loudly as ever. The other 3 divisions stopped paying very close attention, especially the Profound and Pillstream divisions, who were focused on working with their Heavenspan battleships. Suddenly, on noon of the 7th day, the hand which had once been the headquarters of the Bloodstream sect moved, accompanied by muffled rumbling. That simple movement was enough to cause the Bloodstream Division cultivators to let out shouts of joy. The cultivators of the other 3 divisions looked over in shock to see Middle Peak slowly bending over. As it did, countless buildings and structures were destroyed and began to fall down. However, no one seemed to care about that. Everyone was paying attention to the blood ancestor's body, submerged beneath the surface of the Heavenspan River, as it slowly twitched again. River water churned, and huge waves rolled out. Slowly but surely, the other fingers on the hand began to move. The cultivators of the Bloodstream Division were going mad with excitement, and the other cultivators were gasping constantly. Indescribable rumbling sounds echoed out. Everyone who was witnessing this event felt as if they were watching a myth play out before their own eyes. Despite having prepared mentally, the shock which rose up in the hearts of those present was impossible to avoid. All cultivators, even the patriarchs of the other 3 divisions, looked on with flickering expressions and wide eyes. Founding Patriarch Frigid Sect was sweating as he murmured, if the blood ancestor of the Bloodstream Sect can truly stand up. As it turned out, Bai Xiaochun was even more important to the Bloodstream division than he had previously imagined. Patriarch Crimson Soul also gasped when he saw the huge fingers bending. He swallowed hard, and beads of sweat popped out on his forehead. Suddenly, he felt relieved that the Spirit and Bloodstream sects hadn't mobilized the Blood Ancestor to attack the Profound Stream Sect. If that had happened, they would have been lucky to come out of the fight with even half of the people they currently possessed. Things didn't end with the moving of the finger. In the following days, boulders continued to fall down into the waters below. The former Bloodstream Sect headquarters didn't just look like mountains anymore, but rather, an actual hand. In fact, some places on its surface truly resembled skin. The Profound and Pillstream divisions had finally completed their work with their Heavenspan battleships, and just like the cultivators from the Spirit Stream division, they were now ready to begin traveling. It was at that point that the Blood Ancestor's entire hand moved. On that day, under the eyes of countless onlookers, the 5 fingers which had once been the headquarters of the Bloodstream Sect slowly clenched together into an enormous fist. Intense rumbling echoed out, and countless boulders were shattered, causing a hail of rubble and rock to rain down. Countless cries of shock rang out as, unexpectedly, the entire arm moved. Although it was only a simple motion, because the arm was actually connected to both the land and the river, everything quaked violently, and huge rifts snaked out in all directions. Massive portions of land surrounding the Heavenspan River simply collapsed. The river itself surged with huge waves so powerful that the Pillstream Sect's Heavenspan battleship actually began to rock back and forth. What's happening? The arm just moved. Don't tell me that hand is going to push down onto the ground and lift up the rest of the body. After the words left Patriarch Crimson Soul's mouth, everything went silent. By now, everyone could see what was about to happen. The patriarchs of the 3 divisions, as well as all of the other disciples, could do nothing but watch in muted silence. As for the Bloodstream division, they yet again began to call out. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Their voices were louder this time as they gave voice to the emotions which had been building up for the past half-month. Amidst the cheering, the Blood Ancestor's arm continued to move. Cracking sounds rang out, and more boulders and rubble fell. Inside of the Blood Ancestor, the Foundation Establishment and Gold Core cultivators, along with the Patriarchs, were all sending explosive cultivation base power out, which was continuously fusing with the Blood Ancestor. The most difficult job, though, was up to Bai Xiaochun. Not only did he have to merge the consciousnesses of everyone present into one, he had to send that merged consciousness back out into the rest of the Blood Ancestor's body. He was the crux of it all, and every time he made even the slightest mistake, it led to failure. During the past half-month, he had performed numerous tests, and had failed on countless occasions. However, he never gave up. The cultivators of the Bloodstream division were giving him their support, their strength, and their divine sense. What he had to do was take that and use it to give the Blood Ancestor the strength to stand up. Currently, he was sitting cross-legged in the heart of the Blood Ancestor, trembling visibly. His heart was pounding, and boundless blood chi was flowing through the blood vessels out into the Blood Ancestor. I am the Blood Ancestor, he roared. Everything he had experienced in the past half a month had led up to this moment. Not only was he guiding the consciousnesses of everyone present, he was doing so without the slightest misstep, sending power to all corners of the Blood Ancestor's body. His eyes were completely bloodshot as he howled at the top of his lungs. His mind was reeling as he experienced something very similar to when he had received the legacy. He was now the Blood Ancestor. The feeling was even more intense than before. Bai Xiaochun took a long, deep breath as he seized hold of the feeling, then lifted his right hand and pushed it forward. In that exact same moment, the cultivators of the 3 divisions were looking on with wide eyes. Suddenly, people began to cry out in shock. It's moving. Everyone watched as the enormous hand which had once housed the headquarters of the Bloodstream Sect rose up, angled down, and then planted itself onto the ground. It was almost as if the body attached to that hand were about to use it to push itself into a standing position. Deafening booms filled the area, and countless crevices opened up in the ground. Dust billowed out in all directions, sweeping about like a cyclone as a huge depression opened up in the land. Massive waves rolled out over the surface of the river in completely unheard of fashion. At the same time, 2 enormous beams of light suddenly shone up from beneath the surface of the Heavenspan River. They were eyes. The eyes of the Blood Ancestor, and the eyes of Bai Xiaochun. After countless years of silence, the 2 eyes on the enormous head down below had opened. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters,